pull up a chair, take out the oxygen, and join the discussion.
You've just stepped into Life Unculturable,
the world where conversations grow faster than colonies.
We're your hosts, Sam and Julia, scientists by day,
Podcasters by night,
and professional oxygen avoiders 24/7. Join us in exploring the science of microbes that thrive in the absence of oxygen on Life Unculturable.
Well, hello and welcome to the next episode of Life Unculturable. We're back, Sam and me, and actually this episode I'm going to take a back seat a little bit and let Sam do most of the talking, because we are going to talk about sample procurement, and Sam is our specialist.
Yes, alleged specialist. So we'll see what we can do.
I think we have a freezer full of proof that you are the specialist.
Well, I suppose I've hit that proverbial pay dirt a time or two in the last year.
You certainly did. So, Sam, we've already talked about our research interests and what we're kind of doing in the lab. And today we're going to talk about the basis for all of our research, so to say, our gold that we collect in the samples that mostly you collect for us.
Well, I've certainly collected a few of them for us, but I do really enjoy that process. And you're right, Julia, those samples are essentially where most of our work begins. You know, we'll be fascinated with a particular creature, or in a particular environment. And then, we've got to go out and actually get something before we start to grow the things that are present inside said samples.
Yes. And also the samples are like the basis for all the steps in our lab. So whether it's growing new isolates, but also if you look at it in culture-independent work, you also need to sample, or at least the DNA, before you can do anything.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Especially in our case where, like we chatted a little bit about last time, sort of using those survey data to try to then inform which samples we're ultimately going to want to go back to, because we might collect 50 samples but only be interested in 3 or 4.
True. So that's why this culture-independent approach first and then culturing or isolation is quite an efficient strategy, I think.
Yeah, and so for those of you that don't know or perhaps zonked out in that part of the last episode, Julia and I, a lot of what we do in the lab is essentially hunting down sort of the black box that is yet to be cultivated microbes. I tend to lean towards the bacterial side of things. Julia tends to lean towards the fungal side of things. But in a nutshell, we both follow similar strategies when we're trying to take some sort of an unknown sample, examine what's in that sample, make a determination as to whether or not we want to attempt to cultivate a specific microbe that's in it, and then ultimately grow it and pull it out and isolate it and purify it.
Yes.
Yeah. And like you said earlier, it all starts with samples. That's ultimately the bedrock of a lot of what we do.
Yes, true.
Yeah.
It all starts with samples, and it all starts with Sam.
Well, not always me. Not always me.
Well, most of the time. I think I've collected maybe 10% of the samples we got since we both were joining the lab. And we did inherit like freezers full of poop too. We have to give a little shout out to our predecessors who collected a ton of samples.
Yes, I will say that was a selling point for me coming up to OSU when I came up to interview. One of the things that we talked about actually was an Excel spreadsheet of the fecal samples in the -80.
The magic
If that
Excel.
tells you anything about how my brain works.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like it. And, you weren't here for you joined only in autumn, right? You were not here for the summer. The summer all the freezers died and we had to ship poop from one freezer to the next.
Yes. No, I officially started August 1st. So, I was right at the beginning of fall there. Yeah.
You dodged it there.
I did.
That was a good choice, I think.
That was calculated. Yeah, there's nothing worse than having a -80 go out.
Yeah.
And having to shuttle things around in a hurry very quickly. Freezers, if you're listening, if you're on Wi-Fi and you hear us, please hold steady. Hold steady.
Yes. Okay, so samples. What are the first steps, Sam, that you as a sample procurement specialist take?
Well, for the most part, the beginning point of that is sort of what does the direction of our study going to be? Like, are we going to be involved in a project with a particular group of animals, maybe like camelids, for instance? Or do we want to hone in on a specific animal, like a cow? Or do we want to sample from a wide array of a larger group of animals, like, say, just reptiles in general? So I think the beginning point is just trying to figure out what you might want and then what you want to do with that. But then once you ultimately have that directionality, like, say we want to do, like, we're right in the middle now of a camelid project, it's identifying, okay, well, what camelids are there and what camelids do I have access to? And so once we have access to something, then I think we send Sam, the sample procurement specialist, out into the wild to attempt to convince crazy people, not crazy people,
like-minded
attempt to
people.
convince very like-minded individuals that it's okay for us to be playing around in their animal poop.
True, yeah. I think the camelid project might be a good point to start. So the project we're in the middle of is like looking at fecal samples from all the camelids we can get our hands on and compare their microbiome. Taking that as an example project that you and I and our audience are now walking through. What was your first step once we were sure we want to look at camelids? What was your first step that you took?
Yeah, so I think camelids is good because, relatively speaking, there are not a ton of different species of camelids. And if you further restrict that to just camelids that you have easy access to, say, in the continental United States, you really have three options, right? It's alpacas, it's llamas, and it's camels. And so I think for me, where I started, once I knew that it was, hey, we have a directive, we're going to be embarking on this camelid journey, my essential foray into this was joking and saying, haha, I know a guy. And that's sort of where this madness started. But I actually personally knew an individual. It was an alpaca rancher. And so I knew that they had alpacas and llamas on their property. And so I essentially just went back to that same place. And they were more than happy to give us more samples. But I think perhaps more importantly than just going back and revisiting the one individual I know, it was harnessing the power of asking the all-important question of, do you know anybody else? And thankfully, they did. So shout out to Carrie and Terry down in Newcastle, Oklahoma, if you're listening to this. I really appreciate you. And they essentially were able to put me in contact with a lot of other alpaca and llama people, at least in the state of Oklahoma, and then even in some neighboring states, Texas and Colorado and things of that sort. Camels themselves were much more difficult to come by, but at least in the beginning, at the beginning of this project, alpacas and llamas, it was very, very straightforward to require those samples.
True. Those animals are part of the farming or agricultural world. Like, there are llama farms and alpaca farms and even camel farms out there. What would you do if it is not an animal that is farmable? Say, I don't know, iguanas, are they farmable?
Oh my, I'm sure that there are iguana farms out there somewhere. So to the 4 iguana farms that are out there and that exist, I apologize. But yeah, I think it's essentially, a bit of a cheat code if you can go to a farm, or like you mentioned in the case of alpacas and llamas and even camels, there's a bit of like agritourism, at least here in Oklahoma, where there's farms that actively encourage people, come out, spend time with our animals, do this stuff with them, feed them, etc. And so it's really easy to gain that access and to be close to them. I think it gets a little bit more difficult's probably the wrong word, maybe technical, when we start thinking about animals where that's not really the case, because then we start having to contact perhaps private entities that are not just individual like landowners or property owners. They might be, say, organizations like zoos or animal sanctuaries or other types of places where you might find a bunch of a particular type of animal or several types of animals all together. And obviously with that, you kind of sometimes run into like paperwork. Do you need to fill out particular forms and have people on review boards look over what you want to do? Not that I'm saying that that's a bad thing, because obviously we want to make sure that these animals are treated well and that they're not harmed in any way. And I think for us specifically, because we're really just dealing in fecal material, it's a little bit easier because we're not asking the animal to do anything that it's not already going to do. Like, it's going to eat, it's going to poop, and we just want to scoop it up once it's done. We don't want to like poke it and prick it and take blood and inject things into it. Like, just to be clear, we don't do that type of microbiology here, folks. We deal with the anaerobes in the poop. And so I think that makes us a little bit easier of a sell to some people that would otherwise be apprehensive to, say, like big microbiology.
Well, I think that kind of depends on the animal, right? Because thinking back on the ostriches, and that was before you came, before I knew that there was going to be a sample procurement specialist, I tried to convince 2 ostrich farms to give us samples, and they were not happy. Apparently, ostriches are better left alone, and their poop just left where it is.
Yes, and that you're exactly right. Like, certain animals are a lot more docile than, say, the angry ostrich would be. You're less likely to get attacked by, say, an alpaca than you probably are an ostrich or an alligator or something of that sort. So yeah, I think definitely the animal in question is a big component here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We might need the ethics commission to review our projects more on the behalf of the people who are going to pick up the poop instead of the animal. Oh
my. Yes. Yeah, definitely do so at your own risk. Yeah, if I'm not personally collecting the fecal material, because sometimes I will go and I'll take the afternoon or take the morning. I'll drive 2 or 3 hours to a farm, chat with the farmer, chat with the person in charge, the decision maker, and then, I might personally collect the samples. And in that case, I'm sort of assuming that risk, like, oh, if this bison decides to turn around and chuck me 6 feet in the air, or if the ostrich pecks me, or whatever it might be, it's sort of on me. But yeah, sometimes I can't do that. Like, I'm talking to a farm perhaps it's in Northern California or upstate New Hampshire, someplace that I'm not going to get to very, very easily. And so, yeah, it becomes sort of the responsibility of that particular decision maker, that landowner, to, go out with caution and to collect these samples that we're asking them to collect. And sometimes you get some interesting reactions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
but I will say I've yet to have anybody be maimed in the course of, getting me samples. So
as far as you know.
As far as I know, no one's reported that to me. And it's been 2016. So it's been about 10 years. So I've got a pretty good track record, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
We'll keep you updated on his track record in the future.
Yes. That goes for myself and other people as well. So.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I've yet to be injured.
I don't know. In German, there's the saying of "Don't praise the evening before the day is done." As in, now you jinxed it. I think is probably the name, the saying in English.
Yeah. We would the one that reminds me of is it's "Don't count your chickens before they hatch."
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the segments we introduced in the last episode was the question from our students, and also today we have one of those questions. And I'm just going to read it to you, Sam.
Okay.
So this question
lay it on me.
Says, do you have any favorite kind of poop or any poop that you really did not like the smell of, and why?
Oh, my. Okay. So this is from the undergrads, folks. Let's see. Okay. I think my least favorite fecal material to work with in the lab has probably been anything that eats a lot of meat. So I think I would have to put human beings up there.
Yes.
Those tend to not be the best.
Although we would have to check if vegans smell as bad as, as omnivores.
I don't want to be a part of that. I need like a smell-o-meter. We have to like a pH probe it, but for like smells, I don't think I want to partake in that. So yeah, I would say for me, anything that is particularly raunchy would be something where there's like a lot of meat that tends to, in my experience, be a bit more smelly. I recently, the other day, was working with armadillo feces, and that was hands down one of the worst smells I've smelled in a long time. And so whatever that armadillo was eating, don't eat that. So that's all I've got to say about that. Yeah. What about you, Julia? What's your least favorite fecal sample to work with in the lab?
I think I don't really have much to add because, yes, meat makes everything worse fecal-wise. And then maybe if we go away from the smell, there's also the consistency. And I'm sorry if we're going to gross out some people here, but the consistency issue when you work with the samples is important. And I would say the worst one that I had was turtles so far, consistency-wise and also smell-wise. They are pretty bad too.
That's interesting. I was going to throw snakes up there on the list with turtles. Like I had some from I don't remember if it was a python or a boa, but it was one of those constrictor-like snakes, and it was tough. Mm-hmm. Consistency-wise and smell-wise, it was not the best. Yeah.
Although I do have to say, smell-wise, the chamber actually saves you from a lot of it. Because back in Austria, we were dealing with poop without a chamber. And boy, is that a different experience. Oh, and that reminds me of the worst that I've actually had to work with is dog feces.
Ooh.
Dog feces at 39 degrees Celsius.
Ooh. Does it matter the dog? Are we giving a preference to a dachshund or a chihuahua?
Luckily, we only smelled one kind of dog feces, and I'm never going to do it again, so I cannot answer this question. But shout out to my Innsbruck colleagues who handled the dog feces.
Wow. Oh, so you weren't actually handling it?
I was in the lab doing it, and I handled the isolations we tried out of this dog feces, so I did part of it. But the initial warming of the feces and putting it into flasks was done by my colleagues. Wow. And we had like one of those transportable incubators, the small ones, and we had to take that outside the lab and like let it air out for a bit because it was terrible. It was just terrible.
Wow.
But that also reminds me, because the chamber saves you from the smells, of course. It saves you from the bad smells, but it also saves you from the good smells. And seeing Sam's face, it's probably...
It saves you from the good smells.
It's probably the reaction everybody has listening to that. But yes, there is good fecal smells.
Well, I'm not going to comment on that one, folks, but I will agree that the chamber serves as a nice barrier and does tend to cut down on that smell. It doesn't do much for consistency or the visuals.
No.
So if you're kind of squeamish, that's rough. But at this point in the game, I'm good. Every now and then a different texture will kind of make me wince, but I feel like I've almost seen it all in this.
Yeah.
At this stage in the game.
Also, as a microbiologist, you cannot be squeamish about smells either, because sometimes opening the tubes also, like especially bacteria tubes, no hate there, but especially bacteria are terrible.
Yes. Oh, I cannot tell you the joy that it used to bring me in the lab when I was mentoring undergrads, when it would be time to like pop open the bulge tubes and to clean them, and you would just get that. All of those horrible, raunchy smells. It made me so happy. And it's some point. But even as I was as a teaching assistant, I would sometimes bring anaerobes down into the teaching labs, and I would just crack open the jar in the teaching labs. And I would be like, you guys have smelled E. coli. We've dealt with the facultative anaerobe, the one Clostridium that we use, but like here's the real deal. This is rich. I'm a sommelier of the anaerobic gases and juices of these microbes. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to see that you're the sommelier of those, and I'm the fecal sommelier that would say I'll take Kappa-K feces anytime.
So that's a good point. We talked about the worst ones, but what's the best? Do we have a favorite or a least bad? Maybe there's a least bad option.
Well, I definitely have a favorite, hands down. There's one fecal material that I've smelled so far in all of my career that really smells nice. I would make a candle out of it.
and for those listening at home, this fecal candle would be...
It's available in our shop that will be set up soon.
Yes.
But no, hands down, I'm going to say the German name because I never can pronounce the English name. It's a bird. It's the Auerhahn. It's in the grouse bird family. And given that it eats like pine needles and all of that, it just smells of the forest.
That's so interesting. A bird that eats pine needles, that poops, that's a smell that smells like pine needles. Okay.
It might also be, maybe also in my brain it got jungler, because that when we handled this kind of feces, that was the same day when we handled the dog feces. So maybe it was just the comparison of the pine needle scent.
I see.
And the hell of the dog scent.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't, aside from the big ratites, the emus, ostriches, and rheas, I can't say that I've handled very many bird feces in the lab.
You did get us some. You got us some macaws and a peacock.
That's true. But I have not wafted those yet, so I can't. I can neither confirm nor deny the smelliness of those.
Do you have...
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what mine would be. I think for me, so hands down it goes herbivores in general. Mm-hmm. So herbivores better than most things.
Yes.
And then especially herbivores when we start making like these refined little pellets. Mm-hmm. And so I think in the vein, we've sort of been chatting a lot about alpacas and llamas in this episode, at least I have. And I think for me, I would give the nod to probably alpacas in that sense. In my experience, they're not very smelly. Like you could be standing quite literally in a field with mounds of alpaca feces, and it's not so bad at all.
Yeah, you would know that, right?
I would know that. I would know that. Yeah. No, at some point in time, I'm going to have to tell this story about how I went out to collect alpaca feces, and it was for my non-American metric colleagues out there. It was 0 degrees Celsius outside. And probably below 0 degrees Celsius. It was very cold that day. And so blatantly obvious when the fresh fecal material was coming out because it came out piping hot. And so there I was, gloved up and ready to rock and roll with Picasso and Arishi and all the other alpaca that were just hanging out that super frozen morning in that field. But yeah, I'm giving the nod, I think, to alpacas.
Nice.
Yeah, anything that'll pellet like a rabbit, that would be up there for me too. Mm-hmm. It's just a nice little ball. Those tend to be the least smelly in my opinion.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you're collecting samples, I assume you have certain steps you take, especially, and we're an all things anaerobic lab. So maybe talk us through the special requirements for anaerobic samples, if there are any, how you would do it yourself, and what instructions you would give to the other people if they're doing it for you.
Oh my, this sounds like a 1 hour aside in and of itself. So buckle up, everybody. I think for me, in this ideal pie in the sky world, I would have access to anoxic gas. I would have access to liquid nitrogen, a -80, portable -80 freezer that I could wear as a backpack, all the things. But again, that's not really feasible, and we're dealing sort of with imperfect conditions. So I think best case scenario, oftentimes, say I'm going to go collect the sample myself. I have an anaerobic jar that stays in my truck 365 days a year. And for those of you that may not be aware, an anaerobic jar is essentially just a vessel that you can close. You can fill it with either an anoxic gas, a nitrogen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, a blend of those, or you can add what are called like anaerobic gas packs. Think of like hot hands. You kind of rip them open. They begin catalyzing reactions and taking oxygen out, creating water vapor, that sort of thing. So I have an anaerobic jar in my truck, and I have little anaerobic sachets, these little gas packs, if you will, that essentially create an anoxic atmosphere. And then I have a plethora of collection tubes, all the ethanol, all the scupulas, the gloves, the Sharpies, all the stuff. And so that's me just as I'm driving to and from. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm driving to the mall, if I'm driving to the lab, if I'm going out intentionally on a sample trip, I always have that in my truck. And so I'm always ready in that sense. And so for me, like say the other day I went out and I was sampling some goats here in the greater Stillwater area. And so I pulled up to this individual's house, got my anaerobic jar out of the back of my truck, and we went out into the field and we just sort of started waiting for the animals to poop, right? Because in our line of work, dealing with sort of unculturable, life unculturable, but microbes in animal poop, oftentimes the freshest is the bestest. That's not to say that like old fecal material is bad, but it's had a longer amount of time to be exposed to oxygen and to sort of go through some processes that we'd really not like for it to happen if we can get away with it. And so she and I are essentially just in this field. We're just chatting about life, where you grew up, that sort of stuff. What do you do for work? And eventually the goats just start doing what goats do. They're eating, they're pooping, and I'm like, that one. And so then I can witness like a particular goat over there by itself defecate onto the ground. I'll go over, scoop things up, get it in my anaerobic jar, get it sealed, and essentially wait for the next one.
Or do you fill the whole jar with the poop?
Oh, no, I'm putting the poop in like a collection tube.
You're putting the poop in the tube?
Oh, certainly. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm putting poop in like a 50 ml collection tube. Yeah, I don't want to have to clean the inside of that jar out too much. That would be rough. And then once I've collected all of my samples, then I will open up one of those anaerobic gas packs, set it in there with them, make sure that it's sealed really well, and then I'll take those back to the lab, and then we can process them. And if we can process them that day, that's even probably better in my opinion. But if not, then it's essentially getting them to like minus 20 at the bare minimum, but ideally like minus 80 as quickly as possible, just to try to preserve whatever anoxic life is like holding on by a thread in the middle of that fecal pellet once it's made its way back to the lab. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, that's just me. Like if I'm going out to do that, if it's not me and I ask, say, a rancher or caretaker or something like that to collect samples, what I usually try to ask them to do, because I don't ever anticipate that any other human being has an anaerobic jar and gas packs in their truck. What I do is I just ask them to fill the tube as full as possible. And so the reason for that is we want to try to eliminate as much oxygen as we can from those collection tubes. And so we really don't want to have much head space in there at all. I'll let them fill the collection tubes as full as they possibly can and then just stick it directly in a freezer, because it might not all happen the same day for them. We might be asking them to collect from 20 or 30 different animals. Mm-hmm. And so it might take them 5 days, a week. But then whenever all of the samples are then collected and in that minus 20 or minus 80 or whatever they might have on site, then we usually get them shipped back to us on ice. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of like, is it the best? Probably not, but it's what works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to just make do with what you have.
Exactly.
And sometimes the samples sit around in a FedEx shipping facility for a while until they're not cold anymore, but we're just going to roll with it.
Yes, FedEx, if you're listening, we love you. We hold no biases towards FedEx or UPS. That's usually what I tell people when I'm asking them to collect samples. I'm like, hey, and I've convinced you to do this. Like, oh, I'll pay for shipping. Which do you hate less, UPS or FedEx? That's who I'll send it to you, because everybody always has a strong opinion about, I will never use fill in the blank service again. And I go, okay, so the other one works for me. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And always fill up the 50 ml tube, because I imagine from a chinchilla, a 50 ml tube of poop could be taking a while. Yes.
Yeah, that is a great point. It's I would say important to keep in mind the size of your target animal, especially their fecal material. And so certainly sometimes I do, instead of sending just 50 ml tubes, I might send like 15 ml tubes or even 2 ml tubes.
Nice.
Yeah, so sometimes people will get like a small, medium, and a large baggie inside a box from me. Yeah.
The pre-packed SAM package.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. And out of interest, what kind of metadata are you collecting on your samples? I mean, I assume it depends on the research project, but what are we collecting?
Yeah, as much as I can is usually the answer. I try not to burden the individual that's going to be collecting the samples with a bunch of extra work per se, but I do always ask for as much as they can give me. I would really, really appreciate. But yeah, certainly sometimes our projects are sort of like we need information on, say, diet, or we need information on age, because we're trying to answer a question that's sort of dependent on the age or the diet of a particular type of animal. But in general, basically as much as individuals are willing to give me, probably some of the more basic things would be like the age of the animal, the sex of the animal. That'd probably be like the bare minimum I would want. I'd at least like to know how old, and we need a couple of identifiers to go with these fecal tubes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you said you don't want to burden the people. So that brings me to my next question, I guess. Because I've made the experience that people are maybe not as willing to provide samples as you are to receive them. So do you have any tips or tricks how you get people to cooperate?
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, and it can be difficult. And that's not to say that every time I call somebody that they're like, oh, Sam, here's 100 samples. Here, just have it. No, there are plenty of angry, hung-up phone calls that I am a part of from time to time. A lot of unanswered voicemails. A lot of please don't ever call me agains. I have no idea how you got my number. So there's plenty of setbacks, but I think for the most part, it's like it's a numbers game. You know, if I ask, say, 10 people, I know at least one of them is going to give me like a yes. And I try my best to, I don't want to say zone in or stalk people prior to calling them, but I do try to investigate individuals prior to asking. Like oftentimes I find that like if it's a farm or if it's some sort of an animal preserve or a sanctuary or something, usually there will be a website with like an About Us tab or something of that sort. It's like, oh, you know, formed by John and Cindy in 1987 to take care of fill-in-the-blank animal. And I try to do some due diligence and read through that information, at least to know like some names, sort of what the program or what the operation is about. Like, are they committed to education or conservation or, you know, species diversity? Like, what is the thing that makes these people tick? And then I try to chat with them about that. And I think passion is an important thing. I think it's very obvious when you talk to somebody, if they're passionate about a particular topic, it's almost more engaging, and I'm more willing to participate in that conversation. And so I tend to bring a lot of passion about anaerobic microbiology. I also tend to start off with jokes. Like I will, when I call someone, I'll say something to the effect of, I'll give away some of my secrets here. I'll say like, oh, thank you so much for, you know, taking a call from a weird area code, because you know, I have a Missouri area code on my phone because I grew up in central Missouri, and I've never changed it. But I might be calling a farm in Colorado or Oregon or wherever. And so I'll just kind of thank them for taking a weird call, not presuming it's like spam or robocall. And then I'll usually say something to the effect of like, this is going to be the weirdest conversation you have today. And by then, I think I've usually piqued their interest. And then I just dive head into like animal poop, and people are always asking why. It's either why do you want this, or oh my, we have so much of this. It's like, you want this thing that we have so much of? And I'm like, yes, I want as much of it as you can give me. Usually. Sometimes I'm told to stop. It's like, Sam, we have 400 camel samples, no more.
And luckily we've never asked you to collect elephant samples. Because then we would get truckloads.
Well,
probably. But like one elephant poops so much that if you go with like, give me all the poop, you will get a truckload of it.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like, you know, do we want to collect samples from the same individual over and over again, like a time series? Or, you know, do we just want a bunch of independent samples from different individuals? And see, I think there's really a lot that goes into that.
Yeah, and I think the importance of the preparation cannot be understated. So learn from our mistakes and think about what kind of samples you want and what kind of questions you want to answer before you start sampling or even working.
And then I think, to give away a secret, something that's been really key for us, at least recently with some of the last bigger collection efforts we've had with a couple of different entities, has been setting up like a Google Doc sheet. I don't know what that even is. Google Sheets?
Google Sheets, yeah.
Okay. I'm a senile old man. What's that Google stuff? It's like setting up a Google Sheet with some of the metadata that we might be interested in. and leaving those as like a column header. And then, but again, asking them if you have it, fantastic. If not, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of come back to that later. And it seems that people have been pretty receptive to filling those out. So that's been really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, we had so many people be very organized about the samples they send us. I'm always impressed when people are very, very organized and neat and everything is labeled neatly.
Yes,
we love you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to that point, with having like a spreadsheet system or some other sort of data collection protocol, is there's only so much you can write on a 50 mil tube or a 2 mil tube, and if you have huge handwriting and it's sloppy, like, good luck. We might get 4 letters out of you. But yeah, having that typed out into a nice,
Yes.
we're honing in on rows 4 through 8. That's really been nice. I think that's been a huge improvement for us.
Life is always better with Excel sheets for everything.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Nice. And maybe there's one last thing we haven't really talked about is the permits and potential bureaucracy that comes along with it. And as a European, I have to say, in the US, you're living a pretty easy life in that regard, because there's no Nagoya protocol or anything that you have to keep in mind. But sampling from national parks sometimes requires other permits, because not everybody is allowed, for example, to sample Yosemite or whatever other national park.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I do want to circle back to permits in just a moment. But I think to the location from which you're going to collect your samples, it will sort of determine maybe the complexities that you will have to go through to get them. Yeah, like if it's for instance, federal land or state land, that's a bit more complex because you may have to submit protocols and documents and things like that to a particular person in an agency in the either the state or federal or even local government to get the approval for that. Versus, again, take like Farmer Joe, that's the alpaca farmer. It's quite a bit easier to just get a yes from that one person than it is to get a yes from 6 different people's desks, navigating their email system, navigating their time off, and that sort of thing. And so that can really make the process quite a bit longer. So if you're just itching to go, say, sample from Yosemite, I'd start that process well in advance. Yeah, well in advance.
And that also applies, surprisingly, to some zoos. So, for example, most zoos that we have had collaborations with, they've been pretty fast. They usually have like a form that you can submit where you fill out what the research project is, what it would entail for the zoo, what you need, what you're doing with it, with the project in the end, or whatever comes out of it. And that's it. You submit it, and then you get a response fairly fast, right? It depends on the zoo, of course, but it's fairly fast. But the zoo that we've been in contact with for the rodents project actually told me just recently that it will take several months until the ethic committee has reviewed the proposal. So even with zoos, sometimes you have to plan in advance.
Yes. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. Yeah. I think there's a lot of forethought that can be put into the planning and the preparation portions for particular studies, especially if you're embarking on a new one with new collaborators or new locations and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, well, but let's say everything went well. You went to your alpaca farm or whatever, wherever you were going. They are willing to send us samples. They've packaged them nicely. They send it to us. What do we do then with it? Like, what happens next with the samples?
Well, what happens next is hopefully they get to us quickly. Thankfully, we get multiple shipments from like UPS and FedEx every single day. So it's sort of a waiting game of like looking out the door to see who's coming with what and is my name on this package. And so I know in the past we've got like a lab Slack chat that every once in a while I will say, hey, look out. I think the tracking says that this will be here in the afternoon. I'm not going to be here. Somebody grab it. Take it into the lab. Don't let it set in the door. But yeah, we got to get it back in the lab as quickly as possible because, I mean, we're going to want to start working on it.
Yeah.
And that's something that we sort of alluded to earlier with the culture dependent and independent approaches. But what does that workflow typically look like for us when we get samples into the lab? Julia, what are you itching to do when we get in the latest? I'm trying to think of the name of that animal that you're really obsessed with that starts with a D. Degu. When we get the latest Degu sample, Degu. When we get that one into the lab, if you have one of those, folks, we would love to have it. Again, the poop, not the animal.
But you can send pictures with it because it's adorable.
Yeah. Oh, true. Sometimes people do send those kind of things in the boxes.
Yeah. Actually, that's the one part of this whole sample collection process that I'm really heavily involved in is not only what we do then, but the storage itself. So we have a neat little barcode printer, and and an Excel sheet that goes along with it, and I just print out barcodes, stick it on there, put in all the metadata we have, and then it goes. If we're not doing it immediately, it goes into the freezer. But if not, if we're working with it immediately, for me, it goes into the chamber with some media tubes for isolation and also some smaller tubes because we will immediately do DNA extraction on it and do some culture independent work. So usually when they come in, we do not open them outside the chamber, usually, most of them.
That was going to be my next question. So obviously these samples are exposed to oxygen from the moment they come out of the animal.
Yes.
But from the moment we get them in the lab, we try our best to only work with them inside the chamber.
Yes.
And so every once in a while, an oddball out there that doesn't like to work on obligately anaerobic microbes might want some of our sample, but we make them go into the chamber, aliquot it out, and then bring out said aliquot to then work with and manipulate on the bench.
Yes.
And so we do really try to take the utmost care to keep these things as anoxic as humanly possible.
Absolutely. We try to minimize any oxygen exposure, which is hard to do, but we're trying our best.
We certainly are.
And maybe for those of you who are interested what we really do with those samples next, you should keep an eye out for our next episode or one of the next episodes on enrichment procedures and isolation of anaerobic fungi, maybe specifically, but maybe we talk about bacteria too. I mean,
that sounds like 2 episodes to me. We'll flip the script and I'll let you do the lion's share of the talking next time. We can talk about AGF. Yeah, no, I really like that. But yeah, enrichment and isolation, that's pretty much the bread and butter of what we do in the lab.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, folks, another segment that we tried out last time that we're going to keep rolling with is the lab yap, where essentially Julia and I are going to perhaps rant, perhaps yap, perhaps just mumble on about a particular topic. And today it seems appropriate as we're talking about smells and fecal stuff and all of those sort of things on the back end of the animals. And so today I think the lab yap is going to have to be, how do you feel about rumen fluid?
Oh, I love the smell of rumen fluid. I do.
We can't do this. We can't do this. Because I'm like, oh, that's a horrible process. Clarifying rumen fluid. Well, scratch that one, folks. Never mind.
No, it's fine. I think we can keep going.
Oh, that idea was a dunce.
I think that's the perfect lab yap.
Oh.
That's the perfect lab yap, and you started it out perfectly. So
for me, it's everything about rumen fluid, other than the fact that it's like magic juice for microbes. It's horrible. I think getting it is rough. You know, you're working with some poor fistulated calf somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and then you get it back to the lab after you've packed, 3 or 4 liters of it back, and then you spend 4 days clarifying it seems, and no lab coat comes out of this unscathed. Like, I'm not wearing any nice clothes that day. I just forget about it. Like, for me, rumen fluid, processing it and working with it, that's just a nightmare.
I guess we feel very differently about rumen fluid then. I mean, yeah, it's a nightmare, especially when you take the rumen fluid back in your car and you kind of drive over a bump and that bottle just tips over, which I've heard happened to some people that I know. But yeah, other than that, the smell of rumen fluid, it's like home.
It's
smells like home.
Wow. Yeah, the American expression would be, oh, it smells like money. Because you're like, oh, farmers just rolling in that dough. They got that cow smell out there. But for me, the worst part is, we're processing rumen fluid that day, and then I come home and it's like, what's for dinner? Beef. And I go, oh no. Because that smell is just, it's made its way into my soul.
Yes.
And I can't get it out of my nose, it seems like, for 2 or 3 days. There's not enough
showering doesn't help
vapor
either.
rub in the world that can take that smell away.
No.
Believe me, I've tried. I've tried processing it with like smells, and I just, I can't do it.
I think my roommates back in Austria also did not like it when we had a clarified rumen fluid processing day. But I don't mind. It really, and especially if you come into the lab and somebody's cooking up anaerobic fungi media, that's where the rumen fluid goes, by the way, mostly. Because I don't think you're using it really.
Oh, yeah. No, we totally use it for...
Oh, really? You
yeah,
did?
we just use less than you all use.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I'm probably somewhere in the... It's probably like 1% to 5% volume per volume, something like that.
Okay,
so
we're definitely higher.
Oh, it very much so. You guys go through a lot of rumen fluid.
We do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so then the feeling you step into the lab, it smells of somebody cooking rumen fluid media. It just smells.
You just turn right around and walk back out. I'm writing today, folks.
What is a smell that feels like rumen fluid feels to me? What would that be for you? Where you like step into the lab and you think, yes, I'm back. Especially if you come from the weekend or a holiday.
Yeah. I think for me, it would just be in general, like opening up an incubator. Mm. Like I think in my experience, people, you either do the micro smells or you do anatomy, physiology, formalin smells. And for me, I don't do those at all. I'm not the dissection king. I'm not gonna lie to you folks. I've taught several dissection labs and cutting open rats and cats and fish, and this ain't about that life. But I think for me, in general, most people find like opening up an incubator and you're just hit in the face with all of these smells that have been percolating over the weekend. And they're just digesting their compounds and just producing some absolutely atrocious at times, like volatile fatty acids or something like that. And that smell, it reminds me, it's like welcome home. When I get back into the lab on a Monday morning, I'm like, I'm here. I'm ready to rock and roll. That's probably like my rumen fluid. Welcome to the lab moment.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I hate it as much as you hate rumen fluid, because when I open those incubators, our fungi are neatly packed into their little tubes. They don't emit any gases to the surrounding area unless you like poke them. And then you open this bacteria incubator and it just hits you in the face.
It can be rough. It is not for the weak.
No. But it's nice to know that the smell of home to the other person is the smell of pure hatred.
And I suppose that's why the lab is split into two hemispheres.
Yes.
We've got the fungal fanatics and the crazy bacterial people on the other side.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Well, Julia, I think we've probably yapped about all of those lovely smells and perceptions of smells long enough. And if we haven't completely grossed you out, maybe you can tune back in with us in the not too distant future, where we're going to explore what we do next with these smelly samples. Once we start enriching and isolating for obligate anaerobes, I think we'll probably do a few episodes on this. We'll probably try to split the AGF away from the bacteria. And
Always.
yeah, that's just how life unculturable works best.
Yes.
We got to keep those domains of life separate. And thank you so much for hanging in there with us. If we haven't grossed you out, if you're interested in this type of content and you want to hear more of it, we are officially online and on the internet now. You can find us all over the place at LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Instagram, and even YouTube.
And
at
Spotify.
Life Unculturable. Yes, tune in. All major podcasting platforms, we are there and ready to be in your ears.
Whether you want us there or not.
Exactly, we're there. hit play, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe, people.
I think that's what I'm supposed to say. And then we, and we fade off into the distance here.